So the first thing I'm doing here is to tape my paper down to the table so that it's not moving around as I'm trying to draft my pattern. After which I'm going to rule across a straight line at the beginning of this paper, the top part of this paper, which will serve as the shoulder line. After which, from that line, I'll start marking my vertical measurements. Vertical measurements are shoulder to bust, shoulder to under bust, shoulder to waist, shoulder to hip, and shoulder to full length. So you can watch the video, the clip attached on the screen right now, to give you a guide on how to actually take these vertical measurements. I have a video where I have done this before in detail, but I just want to take my time to explain these things because moving forward, I'll just be working with the patterns I'm going to be drafting in my subsequent videos. So after doing that, I'm going ahead to mark it on the other side. Then I'm going to connect the lines to get my horizontal lines like this. So I have attached the measurements I'm working with on the screen so that it's easy to follow and understand. I'm also going ahead to label these lines for an easy understanding. So this is how to take your shoulder measurement, and that shoulder measurement I got, which is 15 inches, I'm going to divide it by 2 and I'll mark it at the top line. The next thing I'm going to do is to go down by 1 inch at that point where I mark my shoulder measurement divided by 2. After which I marked my neckline measurement, which is your round bust divided by 12 gives you your actual standard round neck measurement. So not everybody uses 3 inches by 3 inches. Take note of this. After which I made a slant line to connect the shoulder slope to the 3 inches I'm using as a neckline measurement. Moving forward, the next thing I'll do, from the 1 inch slope, I'm going to take my chest line, which is the same thing as your shoulder measurement divided by 2. And now I marked 7.5 inches because my shoulder measurement is my shoulder measurement is 15 inches and divided by 2 I have 7.5. Take note, you are taking that measurement from the 1 inch you've gone down by at the shoulder slant. Another way to get this measurement is to divide your round bust measurement by 6 and add 1.5 inches. It's going to give you your accurate chest line measurement, which you also take from the 1 inch slope. I decided to use my marker to make this bolder, and this is what it looks like now. And now on the chest line, I'm marking the shoulder measurement again divided by 2, which is 7.5 inches. Then I'm just going to connect it using dotted lines to meet the line we have at the top. The next thing to do is to mark your round bust measurement divided by 4. The round bust I'm working with here is 36 inches divided by 4 gives me 9 inches. So I simply marked that on the chest line, and I'll also mark that on the bust line. So after doing that, I'm going to mark that point from the shoulder slant to the chest line divided by 2. Then at that point, I'm going to come in by 1/2 of an inch and I'm going to get my front bodice armhole. So just watch closely and you're going to see how to connect your armhole. So place your pattern master like this to create the first slant, and then you reposition your ruler to connect from that point back to that middle point that you divided, like this. And now, because I'm not trying to achieve anything in particular, I'm just using 3 inches depth of neckline. And to connect the 3 inches to get a perfect cycle, what I'm doing now is to mark the 3 inches all the way down, and then I'm going to square it up before I actually get my perfect cycle, like my perfect curve. So I'm really sorry, I did not know that the lighting of this video was not too clear and it wasn't so close to what I was doing, but trust me, in my subsequent videos we are going to be having proper positioning of the tripod stand and we'll have a very good view of what I'll be doing. So moving on, I'm going to be giving you a very simple formula to get your nipple to nipple measurement. This simple measurement is to divide your round bust measurement by 8 and subtract 1 inch. That gives you the most accurate princess nipple to nipple measurements. If you've been following this channel, I've mentioned it before, but for the sake of those that might be coming across this channel for the first time, I'm just repeating it again. So all I had to do now is to mark the 3.5 inches from the middle, the the beginning of the paper like this, just as you can see me placing the tape, and that serves as the nipple to nipple. The 3.5 is what I marked on this paper, and I ruled a line straight across to the end of the pattern paper. So after doing that, now I'm going to mark my round bust measurement divided by 4 on the bust line as well. That's the same measurement I have on the chest line. Now I marked my round waist measurement divided by 4, and I was working with 28 inches. So 28 divided by 4 gives me 7 inches, and I marked it on the waist line. So on the hip line, I moved over there and I marked my round hip measurement divided by 4, which gives me 10.5 inches. Now look at the way I'm placing my pattern master, and I'm just going to use it to connect the points I've made to each other. After connecting to the waist like this, I'm going to turn the pattern master over like this to get a perfect curve to the hip area. So just take note of how I'm doing these things so that you don't make a mistake when you are drafting your own pattern, because the way you place this ruler matters a lot. So this is the bottom part of this paper, and the bottom part of this paper it serves as the end of the dress I would be making. Though I'm not making a dress, I'm just trying to show you the pattern. And what I had on the hip line was what I transferred to the end of this paper like this. But now you need to take note that only happens if you're trying to make a free dress. If you want to get a pencil dress, all you need to do is to come in by 1.5 to 2 inches. Don't make it more than 2.5 inches because it's going to be too uncomfortable for someone to move around. So 1.5 to 2 inches is just perfect. This depends on what you want and what your client wants. So after doing that, now we need to take our dart on this bodice. And to take your dart, you need to subtract your round under bust from your round bust. And in this case, I have 7 inches. And that 7 inches, I'm just going to divide it by 4, which gives me 1.75. That 1.75, I'm also going to divide it by 2 again. And that's what's going to give me what I'm going to be marking on both sides of the line. I hope you understand this. If you don't understand it, you can simply rewind this video and just take it all over again. So that is the way that works. Some people will tell you just take half of an inch, and if the person is big, take 0.75. But this formula is a way to easily get these things accurately. And the highest you'd usually take is 1 inch on both sides. So just measure these things and get your accurate results. So moving on, before you can connect the dart, you need to go down by 1 inch from the bust line before connecting the dart to avoid having pointy darts like in the picture I'm going to put in. I'm going to attach. So if you don't want to have something looking like that, you need to come down by 1 inch from the bust line before you connect. And from the hip line, you need to go up by about 2 to 2.5 inches. And now you need to take note that some people's waist to hip point is up to 10 inches. In such a situation, you might need to take up to 3 inches or 3.5 inches. But usually 2.5 inches is just fine. So 2.5 inches it is, and I'll just connect it back to create the dart for the front bodice. So one other thing I'll be doing on this pattern is to get the bust darts. Bust darts is simply the difference between the front shoulder to waist and the back shoulder to waist. If you measure human beings, you would notice that the front shoulder to waist and the back shoulder to waist is not the same. Just like on the dress form, I'll put a clip here now so you understand what I'm saying. And all you need to do now is to take that measurement on your client for now, because in my next tutorial where I'll be drafting a more advanced pattern, I'll show you the easy way to get this difference without sweating it out, because this is one thing that confuses people a lot. So moving on, the difference between the front shoulder to waist and the back shoulder to waist for this bodice is about 1.5 inches. And I just marked 1.5 inches following the shape of the line like that. And from the bust point, I went in by 1.5 inches. You also don't want to mark your bust darts from the apex of the bust because you don't want your dart looking pointy. That's why I had to move in by about 1.5 inches. before connecting the darts. The next thing I'll have to do is to actually divide what I have there into two and connect the lines. After which, if you were making this for someone, or if I were to be sewing this pattern, I would have replaced what I had on the waist, just like I'm doing now, before adding my sewing allowance. You're only replacing what you have on the waist, and at the other areas you just add your sewing allowance. But since I'm not going to be using this pattern for anything, I'm going to just leave it the way it is. But you need to take note that if you are actually using a pattern, you need to add sewing allowances. So I'll just keep that part and I'll move to the back bodice already. What I did now was to measure the biggest part of the pattern, which is the hip area, and then I marked it backwards so that I can start drafting the back. I don't know if that makes sense, but you get to understand this with time as I continue drafting patterns on this channel. So what I need to do now is to mark these lines, the bust line. I don't need the bust line, sorry. At the back bodice, I don't need the bust line, so I marked only the shoulder to chest line, and then I marked the new back shoulder to waist line. So because of that bust dart, I'm just going to subtract what I had as the bust dart and mark that as the new back waistline. Because by the time you finish sewing, you're going to have it shorter. I also went to mark the shoulder, the waist to hip point, which is 8 inches, and then I marked that under the waistline. So from this waistline, which is higher, I marked 8 inches, which is the hip point for the back, for the bodice of the dress. So that part will now be the center of the back bodice. So what I'll simply go ahead to do now is to draft the armhole. So this is the chest line, and it remains the same for the front and the back. So I marked the shoulder divided by 2, which is 7.5, and I connected the line just like at the front bodice, and I marked 3 inches. I marked 1 inch as the neck depth for the back. Yeah, the back is usually higher, but I still use the same 3 inches width. Take note that the width is 3 inches. So if your front width is 4 inches, you have to make sure that the back width is 4 inches as well. I also took the shoulder slope from that point and I connected it back to the neckline width. After which I marked my round bust measurement. The round bust I'm working with is 9 inches, and I marked it on the chest line. And now just take note and see the little difference while connecting the back armhole. I would simply mark the center of this line and just blend it in. I just wanted to do it again for the sake of clarity, and then I just adjusted it because I didn't measure it at that time. So just mark the center point and blend it in like this. Unlike the front bodies where we marked and went in by ½ inch, you don't need to do that on the back bodies. So I just went ahead now to mark across the round circumferential measurements divided by 4 on the lines I have here. So whatever I had on the bottom part, I just marked it from the center line like this. Also, please take note, I left 1 inch for zip allowance on the center part of the back. You have to create a space for your zip, which is outside the normal body measurements, so that you don't get into trouble after sewing your dress. Your client will have to get into the dress, and if it's too tight, there's no zip, it's going to be difficult for the person to wear it. Except that dress is big and like a boo-boo, it doesn't have the actual measurements. But if it's a fitted dress, you need a zip. So now on the waistline, I took the same measurement I took for the dart intake, and now there's a difference where the darts connect. At the back bodies, you just need to go down by 1.5 inches from the chest line and connect it back to the waist like this. So the back dart is longer than the front dart because we do not have a bust behind. After which, I'll go up again by 2.5 inches just like I did at the front bodies, and I'm going to connect the darts together. And now on the zip, on the waist area, to contour the back of our bodies, you're just going to take about 0.75 inches or 0.5 inches to 0.75 inches, depending on how curvy the person is. But most likely 0.75 inches works for almost everybody. So you go in on the zipper line by 0.75 inches and connect it to the top neckline like this. After which, from the waistline, you go down by about 5 inches to also blend in what's the contour. So from that 5 inches point, you're going to blend it back to meet the actual zip allowance line. This helps us to contour the back bodice area, because the back, if you look at our bodies, you notice that the inside of the middle of the back is it has a curve. So by the time you do this and you sew in your zip allowance of 1 inch, you'd create that contour that is needed at the back. As time goes on, I'm still going to be showing you other ways to contour your back bodies, but for now, I'm assuming that this tutorial is targeted at people that are not so experienced with sewing. So I'll just leave it at this, and I'll just mark out all the lines using the marker to make everything clearer. So if you learned anything from this video so far, I really appreciate if you give this video a thumbs up and just subscribe to the channel, because I have so much to offer you on this channel moving forward. Okay, so follow me on Instagram, because I'm very active on Instagram and I would really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.